Hunter man. It's given to me by the Waywardon from the Medewan. I am a Medewan. And Turtle Clan. And I've been a lifelong New Yorker, as some of the people in this group can attest. As a matter of fact, I got somebody in here, Tony Caesar, I went to high school with. So as some of the folks in there, Renee Hunter, a brother Tree, Renee, the family, known them all my life. I think there's some other folks in there I've known for quite a long time. So they know I've been in New York, and New York City, and New York State for, all my life, except for the times when I wasn't. I would say I'm kind of honored, and I'm kind of a little bit awed fact that I'm now considered an elder, which is kind of interesting in and of itself, and that you would consider me worthy of having some of my story told. The main thing I would say about New York is that the biggest focus in dealing with this city is that we stay close to family. And most of it is that we have been connected to our family, and that is what has kept us pretty close to each other and pretty close to surviving in our way. In fact, when I first kind of moved into the circle of New York Native community, I was preceded by my cousin Carla. Everybody knew her, so they kept asking me, "Are you related to Carla? What is your relationship to Carla?" So I have to give my cousin Carla props, is that she blazed the path for me to come out to the community and be part of it. So it was kind of interesting. But other than that, we stay focused on our family. And I grew up in the Flushing and Little Neck enclave of Native community there, and didn't get really into the politics of Indian politics until I went into college at Dartmouth and ran into Bruce Oakes and a couple of those guys that we've made longtime friends with, and got involved in the protest of Indian symbols and Indian rights and all of those things that were very high in active Indian studies and so on. And came back from college and began working for the American Indian Community House and Title IV program first, and then the American Indian Community House. Became a program director there for a number of years. And then from there, went to law school, started a family, went to law school, and graduated law school. That was one of the seminal moments of my life. And I know my Renee would tell you that Tree was one of the ones most excited about me. He was more excited about me graduating, I think, than I was, or at least as excited, because he said, we got one. One of ours is there. So I felt pretty good about him saying that about me, that, he felt confident that I would be somebody who would use those skills, not just for personal gain, but for gain of the community. So he was, I tried to stay focused on that mission. So I've dealt with that all my life. And then my mother, who was really the head of our clan, she, I would say request, but it wasn't a request because my mother never asked for anything. She just told you. So she just pretty much directed me to move onto this territory in order to protect the rights of our family. And that was done in 1991, I think. And at that point, I became active in the nation politics and the nation government, and was the first one to actually start a retail store on our territory. And it has since grown to a number of different businesses and stores and even gas. And although we've had many problems with that, I have to say that it's one of the things that I'm very proud of, because during this crisis that we've had to endure, our people, but for these businesses that they've been able to sustain, they would have been in real dire economic straits. But because they were able to maintain their own businesses during this pandemic, we were able to survive economically and be able to provide health care for their families. We've had 11 people exposed to the virus. We had one person who was both Shinnecock and Unkachog as well, who passed away. But given those numbers, I consider it a blessing that we were fortunate that we were able to sustain ourselves in a healthy way. Of course, we all know that one of our favorite sons in New York we lost, and that's Kevin Tarrant. And of course, I knew those guys when they were babies. As a fact, one of my favorite stories about Kevin is that he and Lance, the only time they ever called me uncle was when they were hustling me for quarters so they could play pinball machines. So, and that's how far back it was. It wasn't even, it wasn't even game balls, it was pinball. So, and I remember those guys, and they, down at the McBurney powwows, and I knew them when they were like 6 years old. So, and the whole family, we knew them all. I knew all of them, and it was quite a pleasant time, because we at least were able to see each other and communicate. There weren't that many socials and gatherings at that time. Now there are a lot of them. Everybody goes to them, and I know you're missing all that, because these social events are really ways that we communicate with each other. It is really something that I know we all miss, because it's not only is it a way for people to earn a living or sustain themselves, but it also is a way that we can communicate socially, culturally, and and every other way too, politically, or whatever way you want to call it. So it is a very valuable time that we're missing. So these kind of Zoom sessions here, I'm becoming Zoom literate. So it's something that we need to continue. And maybe this is the new dynamic, I don't know, but I'm trying. There's ways in which people are learning about different things like language and song and study and all of that. They're also getting familiar with their children all over again, and they realize how bad they are. And so I say that facetiously, but only half so, because everybody on the screen knows it's true, right? So the thing is that I miss my grandson. I miss my kid. I miss, my adult children. I talk to them, yes, but there is face-to-face that's important. I miss my Medewan family. We have lost the opportunity to have ceremonies. There's somebody, there's a Ginuzi. What's your name there, Tecumseh? Ginuzi Anishinaabe. He's a initiate in the Medewan family, and it's our way. It's a way of our people, and we are building a Medewan community here on the East Coast. And other than that, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time. People can talk, ask me all they want about what they want to, but I'm honored to be a part of this. I've been a part of the American Community House for a long time. I've been a part of the New York community all my life, and I'm glad to see that we're still moving forward. I have two kids, but when they ask me how many kids I got, there's 81 registered in the school district, and so I tell them I got 81 kids, because we worry about our kids in the school district every day. So we have 3 wonderful kids that are graduating this year. Unfortunately, they will not have a graduation ceremony, and that's a sad thing, but at least it's a good thing that we will honor them in our special way to make sure that they receive the fact that we know that their accomplishment is recognized and appreciated, because we can't afford to lose any people here. Our numbers are not so that we can afford to lose anyone. And I had a Zoom meeting with some legislature representatives not too long ago, and I told them we're not allowed to lose our elders, because our elders are our resource. It is a resource of knowledge that we can't afford to lose. So we can't sacrifice our elders like you guys can. So I'm noticing that those care facilities are one of the most severe places of COVID-19. And we're fortunate that we're able to care for our own in our homes, in their homes, so that they're able to be protected from some of the egregious treatment that others have received in those facilities. So we worry about them, we care about them. I got a 92-year-old uncle. I know Renee was in there. Her dad's 103, and he's still going strong. And my uncle's 92. He's still going strong. He says his girlfriend's getting too old for him. So, okay, uncle, whatever you say. You know, I shouldn't talk about him like that. He'd be mad at me. But, anyway, he's in good shape, healthy, he's strong, and I can't stop him from going to work. He goes to work every night, and I tell him, no, I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to take any chance. Say he's 92. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? So, so that's the kind of spirit of survival and instinct that we have. And we hope that we can continue and to share that with the next generation that are coming. So, and I'm glad that those who are fighting this injustice and murder that is committed against a young black man, because we remember the same murders that were committed against young Native men. And and women, there are over 5,000 missing and murdered women in the US and Canada. I believe it's more than that. And maybe some of this will be the 21st century's ability to shed light on the injustice and the dual systems of law enforcement that exist in this country and in Canada. So we've been fighting that for a long time. I'm also the advocate here for the Indian child welfare on our territory, and we fight every day over the protections of our kids. So anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And you can ask me some questions as we go. I try my best to answer them as best I can. Okay.
I have a question.
Who's that?
That was Melissa, but there was.
Oh yeah, sorry. I had 2 screens on. Sorry about that. I have a question. So I'm just thinking about the journey you went being in your position as a chief, or maybe as an advocate prior to that, and getting, I think from what I understand, you played a key role in getting recognition for your nation. Is that correct? And if so, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, okay. When we started, we knew that it wasn't just about smoke shops, okay? It was about being able to exercise a sovereign right of economic development without interference from the state of New York. And so when we opened up those stores, the first thing it established over was the fact that New York cannot regulate our economy. And it was also an acknowledgement that the outside community was not going to hire qualified people. The closer you get to Indian territory, the worse the outside community is. Most of us know that because they have this unbelievable animosity towards whatever status there is or whatever land they have or whatever uh, um, cultural identity they maintain. So there really is a deep hatred for the closest communities, non-native communities around the territory. And that's true of Long Island as well. It's true of Massachusetts. It's true if you go out west. It's true of everywhere. So we knew that they weren't going to hire us, even if you were qualified for the position. So we had to create an economy that we weren't dependent upon them. And that's why they hated it. They hated it because we were not dependent upon their their doles, their handouts. And so what happened was, because we were successful in that, we were attacked by the state and we were attacked by the city of New York and we were attacked by the Suffolk County. And we defended ourselves from those attacks. And the first thing they said was, well, you're not recognized because the BIA doesn't recognize you. And under federal common law, BIA does not recognize. The BIA only accepts those things that the federal common law establishes. So we were able to establish that through a trial, a jury trial in federal district court in the Eastern District of New York. And we proved that we are a nation based on federal common law in a case which most of you may or may not know, on a 1901 case of Montoya versus the United States, where it says if there are certain criteria that you maintain, and if you maintain that criteria, then you are a nation and your status as a native nation cannot be revoked unless done so by an act of Congress or by treaty or by war, and none of those things took place, or you did so voluntarily, and none of those things took place. So, based on that analysis, the Judge Matsumoto said, Unkichuk Nation is an ancient historical native tribe that is who has the rights of sovereignty and sovereign immunity, and it cannot be interfered with by the state or by the city or by the county of Suffolk County. And that case is Gristedes versus Unkichuk Nation, Gristedes versus Unkichuk Nation, which is why I will never go to a Gristedes supermarket ever. You should boycott that. All of you should boycott that guy. Okay, so he challenged us, and he had then after we defeated him, Mayor of New York City, Bloomberg, challenged us as well. So two billionaires challenged the smallest nation in New York. Okay, tried to attack us, and we defeated both of them. And that's why they don't like me, because I understood the legal ramifications of their attack, and I stood in their way and defended the nation. That's another thing I was proud of, the fact that I was able to defend them. We're litigating one other thing with New York State right now, and that's fishing rights case, very important. And you guys we had a rally there before the pandemic hit, and it's Nation versus the DEC trying to prosecute our guys for fishing. Prosecuting us, or prosecuting Shinnecock, prosecuting everybody, prosecuting Mohawks, prosecuting Senecas. So it's not just us, it's everybody. New York doesn't want us to exercise those rights because we know the future of our economy is in the water. We know that. We protect the water. We preserve the water. Our rights in the water, our ability to fish is our plan, and our way of fishing is better than New York's. New York is not an environmental protector of the water. They're a resource manager. They just manage the licenses. We make sure that the species survives for the next 100 years. That's what our plan involves. And that is what we will succeed on, because that's our mission, that's our goal. So that's where we are today.
No, and I appreciate the fact that you being a lawyer, and after going through all of those studies and graduating, you chose to stay within and advocate for our people. Oftentimes we lose some of those professions to the mainstream, but I just really wanted to feature and speak to you tonight, just based on your journey to where you are now, as well as like dig a little bit deeper into the more recent work that you've done as well, with NAGPRA and so forth. I think that's a very important topic to discuss and share, what you've been through and what you've done thus far.
First, let me just say that I did have offers to go to major entities, other corporate firms and government firms, and I turned them down. I don't know if that was good or bad, but I wound up working for Jim Simmermeyer. Some of you people may know him. And we became really good friends and partners after that for a long time. He's still a good friend. And in fact, in most of these cases, I look to Jim to represent me and to represent the nation if sometimes it's necessary, because we grew up understanding the various concepts of Indian law together. And we've been doing this since the 1980s. And we first had to learn how to practice law, learn how to go to trial, learn the techniques of law practice before that. And as I became involved in nation issues, I had to move away from the actual practice of law and rely on Jim and others to actually do the work. But we do understand each other. And every time we go, we meet different government agencies, it's always Harry Wallace and his effing lawyer. And I kind of like that, because they know that we understand the concepts that we're being confronted with. We may not always win on those things, but we do understand what the consequences are. And it's the same thing when it comes to the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, or NAGPRA. It does not protect private lands. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what nation you are from, it does not protect the digging up of human remains that are found on privately owned land. You must rely on state law to protect that, okay? And New York is one of 4 states that does not have an unmarked burial law. There is a law that's pending in the legislature. It's been pending for a long time on Assemblyman Engelbright and Assemblyman Thiel. I'll have to dig up the actual citation for you. But it does provide for protections for those bodies that are found on private land. And it is the Assembly Bill. I gotta look. Give me a second, I'll find it. It's an unmarked burial law. And it's A5928, if anybody's interested. That's the Assembly Bill pending in the legislature. I believe that's it. Right, 2019, 2020. And New York, so that if human remains are found on private land, no one can do anything about that. Once the medical examiner determines that it is not a homicide, we have to fight to make sure that they don't continue to desecrate those graves. And we fight a lot. Because every time they dig up every time they start a construction site, chances are they're going to find something. And so we've been fighting real hard to make sure that unmarked burials are protected. New York is one of 4 states. The other 3 are Ohio, Wyoming, and New Jersey. And I believe Ohio just passed one, so it's down to 3 now. Okay. And if they're on public lands, that's a different issue. But if it's private, we really have to fight to get them to acknowledge the protections of unmarked burials. And we've been doing that for quite some time since we formulated an organization called the Native American Historical Preservation Task Force. It consists of members of the Long Island Native Nations, the Mohegan and the Pequot in California, some members of the Narragansett, and we invite other members to join us as well, because they're New York, New Jersey, everywhere they're confronting with these issues. So it is something that no matter what I do, no matter where I am, if I'm in government or not in government, this is something that I have, that's a mission to make sure that I continue to work on this this type of work, because it's something that we do in life that we need to protect forever. There's a Medewan story that they tell of a person whose remains were found intact. His name was Nijo Gabo, which means 2 worlds. And the story is that he was looking for his relatives, and he wasn't able to recognize them because they spoke, they looked, and they dressed differently. But he was able to recognize them because of their heart. And he delivered a message to the Medewan. So when I see that these bodies are exposed, it is my belief that they are delivering a message to us. And number 1, we have to learn how to protect them and care for them. But number 2, we have to be able to understand what the message is that they're delivering. So this is an important way for us to know, because if we don't know what the message is, we'll lose that message. And that message will go right by us, and we won't understand what we're supposed to do. Because we have an obligation and a responsibility to continue and carry on this way. And if we don't know what that message is, we won't know how we'll be able to continue and carry on. So that's why this graves protection is important, not because it's a popular cause, but because it's important for us to understand what we're supposed to do. You know?
Mhm.
And
So,
it's
so
the
when
same thing with our children. We have to protect our children because we have to be able to make sure that we have a resource to someone we can deliver the messages to and they don't get lost. Like the 60s scoop, they call it, right? Where all those kids were adopted out and sent over into non-native families and lost that whole generation of people. Anyway, that's my story.
So when you challenge these private landowners, what is one of the main arguments that is most useful for you in, I guess, going at their moral compass, you know, and convincing them to do the right thing, or at least meet you halfway in regards to, I guess you sort of maybe you bring those ancestors back home in a way, from what I know.
It's more than just a moral compass because some of these people are very immoral. But they have to get permits. They have to get permission from the state. Like they have what's called New York State, SHPO or historic preservation of certain areas. They have to get consents from planning boards and county, building departments. So we fight them in those things and saying, if you have a protection that protects a rare plant and you have a protection that protects a rare, fish or a rare bird, then you need to include, human bodies in that equation. So we use those methods of forced protections that exist. There are methods that we can use. We need stronger methods than that because we need to acknowledge the fact that if you find a body, you have to stop your project and you need to do certain things. That's what everybody else does. But in the absence of that, you use these other tools. Lawyers, come up with these other methods and tools to be able to protect. And it's harder, it's more work, it takes a lot of energy, but you use them in order to be able to achieve the same results in a different way. So you use all of those um, uh, special uh, planning board and building permit restrictions that are in place in various towns and state and counties in order to achieve the work that you need to do. And sometimes the towns themselves will come up with a unmarked burial protection procedure. You try to encourage that town by town in the absence of a state law. Okay.
You get involved in them creating that?
I'm sorry?
You get involved in consulting or with, I
We
would,
We
like,
actually were involved in writing the state law that's pending now anyway. So
Yeah.
yes, we get involved in helping them write it. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I thought. I would think that it would be like, a must that they have our opinion in there or our guidance in there as protocol.
Yeah, they're not going to write it. In fact, it's all over New York State. It's not just Long Island. Pete Jemison is involved in the stuff up in what's that area? Gundenagan, right? I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, but yeah, they've been fighting this for a long time because if they dig up bodies there too. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's really of extreme interest for me, but also for Rick and I sort of joined into a lawsuit that I mentioned to you at the Queen's Social about possible, there's a high probability of remains that were found under one of the new jail locations. And
in the last hour challenged that legally with another group as a class action suit. So it's just like important for me to at some point, you know, learn more from you and also include you in that in moving forward, because I think that there's going to be more appeals with that situation.
Sure. Just let me know what, you know, what the situation is. Do the best I can, you know, help you with that. Okay. I think there were some questions about what committee that bill was under. It was sponsored by Senator Engelbright. If you just go to the bill summary website of New York State Legislature, you'll see Engelbright and Thiel and the committee. And it's in committee right now in the Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions Committee. And it's in the Senate also, a comparable bill in the same committee as well in the state Senate. So we helped write that. We helped give a summary because we did the research for all 50 states. We researched the bills for all 50 states. And we helped write this one because we used the state of Florida's bill, which is comparable in New York because there's a lot of people, millions of people in Florida. They have urban and suburban and rural areas in the state. They got major cities like we do, and they have rural areas like we have upstate. So they have the state of Florida is very much similar to New York in its composition of population and geography. So we use that as a model, and it works. Florida's bill works very well. So yeah, and I know there was some sites at one time where they were digging up downtown. If you go downtown and you see some of those cemeteries down there, there are Indian burials in those cemeteries there, because those burial sites are ancient colonial burials, and there are Native people in there.
You know, any offhand, for example?
Yeah, the one next to Trinity Church. And the one next door downtown, I think near, what is that? Stuyvesant, Peter Stuyvesant. They had to cover them up in concrete because they were digging them up. Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, in the Bronx, you have the parks there. That's that big battle up there, Chief Neiman, and they had a big battle. It was a commissioned company that fought in the Bronx, and they were buried. They weren't buried. They were those that did not survive were left to rot, and it was the surrounding community that buried them, and they buried them in place. And we had a protest up there one time they wanted to put a dog run over their graves, and we fought against that, and they moved it and built but it was, since it was the direct descendants of the Stockbridge Muncie people, they took the lead in that, and if they were satisfied with the result, then we backed off. We said, okay, they're your relatives. You decide what's in their best interest, not us. But yeah, it's all over New York, all over. So,
Yeah, interesting. I think there was a NAGPRA conference that was coming up that we're going to miss because of COVID, right? I think were you planning to go to that?
well, I wasn't going to go to it, but we were going to have because the National Museum, what is it called? The National Museum, what is that one on 80th Street? What's it called? And American Museum of Natural History, AMNH, right? They have 6 bodies of our ancestors in there. that were dug up in 1912. And we're trying to get those returned and reinterred. And so I wasn't going to go to the conference, but I was going to, they were going to present a petition to have them released. Some of the most egregious people are these museums. I'm telling you, they are horrible when it comes to remains. In fact, you should know that because they've been digging up brown people for years, right? All of the stuff in the museum, you go to the Met, you walk in there, what's the first thing you see? You see sarcophagus, right? You walk into the museum, American Museum of Natural History, what's the first thing you see? You see ancient Egyptian artifacts, right? Taken from bodies, right? So holding on to native remains, and we were told by the guy as a fellow from the New York State Parks Department, who was familiar with this for a long time, and he said, we don't like to advertise when we find something because we know that the selling of human remains and human funerary objects is $1 billion industry. And if you go to Christie's, you see, you know, Sotheby's and Christie's, they're selling Indian artifacts all the time. And I hate to go to those museums because you don't just see art, you see burial things. I was invited to an exhibit in the Met one time and I didn't want to go. So I knew what I was going to see. I said, no, you got to go, you got to go. I didn't want to go. And what did I see? I saw a ghost dance shirt. I saw a ghost dance dress. I saw a fully beaded outfit allegedly representing from Red Cloud, including the bottoms of the moccasins. Anybody knows anything about burials, you don't bead the bottoms of moccasins unless you're burying somebody in them. And then I was so angry, security started to follow me around because they knew I was angry. They knew what I was looking at. One old white lady there asked me, says, wow, what do you think about that? I said, what do you think about that? Where do you think they got that from? You think they bought it from somebody? You know, so in any event, that's what happens when you see that. It makes you angry, but you have to turn your anger into something that you can work with. And that's what's happening today. People are angry, right? How are they expressing their anger? How do you express anger? Who's got a patent on how anger gets expressed? Not me. And you're younger than I am. I don't have that much time left, so you guys gotta take care of business. Tony looks a lot younger than I do. She's got much more vigor than I am. So she's a lot healthier than I am. Okay.
We have someone who just raised their hand in the chat box for a question, I think, but I don't know who it is. It's a phone number. Let me just unmute you and you can go ahead. See if that works.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. And this has been an amazing experience so far. My grandmother, Diana, she was on the line a little while ago, she worked for the American Indian Community House, and I pretty much grew up there. You know, my native roots, Cherokee and Taino, has been a part of my culture growing up. I mean, I went to a Catholic school and then I went to Columbia University, which I think that in itself, you can see the dichotomy and with that, the issues that I had growing up. I mean, if you just, I guess from standard, what I would be labeled in this society, I'm Puerto Rican from the Bronx. So I felt not so much in my communities, but I felt the inequality, the injustices, the social and economic prejudices when I got to these institutions, just being questioning, why is it like this? And not to get off topic, but I just want to ask you before you go, Harry, with your experience, defending against injustices, against our people's rights for our culture to have access to it and to own it, and not to have it exposed in the most derogatory way. In today's in the context of today's plight, as a Native American, how someone, because I've been fiercely in a very peaceful way, in a very spiritual way, been protesting against these injustices. And I want to, right now, I'm also a screenwriter, so I'm away from the city. I'm from the Bronx. I'm away from the city, finishing this up. But when I get back, I have this burning desire to be a part of these protests. But at the same time, as I want to educate everyone on equality in the most peaceful manner as possible, how do you, from your opinion, I mean, I know it's a personal thing, but from your experience, how should I approach it to, not be an instigator or put the wrong information out there, where our own people of color, they see all the crap on TV, not to instigate the wrong message. So how do you feel, in your opinion, with your experience, that I should go about that?
Okay, I can't tell you how to go about it. In a particular way. All I knew is that for me, and in order to protect myself, I had to become a lawyer, because I knew I was going to get into some shit. Okay, I don't know what it was. I didn't know when it was going to be, but I knew it was coming. Okay, so I had to protect. I went there to protect myself. In fact, I have experience. I don't know if Melissa's cousin there, Bruce Oakes, and Tony Yellowhair, and now Apache, and Larry Long. Now we had to defend ourselves in college, and I don't want to tell you the nature of the story, but the point of the fact is that we pled not guilty, and we had a trial, and we had to defend ourselves. And we looked at the understanding, and he said, well, judge said, I'm rule in your favor. You're not guilty. He said, you're not innocent either, but you're not guilty. Okay. So right then and there, I understood that there is a nuance to the law that needs to be understood and developed, right? Because there's a difference between innocent and not guilty. So in any event, the reason why I went that way is because I wanted to make sure I had the ability and the skills to protect myself. Okay. Now, there's a saying, I don't advocate that you engage in violent behavior, but I do advocate that you defend yourself. Okay. Now, there is a difference between nonviolence and passivity. Okay. If you look at what Gandhi said, he said, there is nothing passive in what I do. Okay. But it is nonviolent. He said, because it is not passive. It is action. So it is affirmative action to protect and mobilize. But we don't engage in violent acts. But I do understand that you need to defend yourself. And defending yourself in this day and age takes on many different elements. So I won't dictate to you how you do that. You have to decide for yourself how you do that. We do know that when there was a lot of protests going on, there were a number of us who stood between us and the least, women and children if they were there. So that if there was a time when there a potential for confrontation, we were there. We were there on the line, front line. When they had the longest walk in 1978, and we went to D.C., there were 100,000 Native people in that march, and not one was arrested. People don't talk about 100,000, right? But when you talk about the other ones, they're going back to the takeover days of BIA and the Wounded Knee. It was a tremendous amount of violence that took place during that time. Violence perpetrated against us and targeted against many people. Okay. And that history is there. So I worry about people getting hurt. I don't want anybody to get hurt because, I was worried when they had the North Dakota pipeline, XL pipeline. I was very scared. We sent coffee, whatever we could, out there, and our bros were out there. We sent everything we can to help, whatever supplies we could find, they could use, and but we were worried that there would be another violent act of vengeance taken against those people who were peaceful protesters. Fortunately, not too many people got hurt during that time, and they just won a victory in court. So hopefully the progress will be made there. But I worry about acts that will rebound against you. You have somebody who was a draft dodger of the worst order, who now wants to prove that he's a tough guy. Those are the scariest types of people to have, because they know they're weak because they're afraid. Everybody's afraid, but he was a coward, and yet now he wants to prove he's a tough guy, and he can do that on the backs of young people like you. So I worry about that. Don't give him that opportunity. Don't give him that opportunity. That's the best I can say.
Thank you.
One of the reasons why I also wanted to highlight you during our Sacred Spaces gathering is mainly because of who you are and what you do. And we need more of that in Indian country to act on our behalf. So for me, I think we should aspire to more having our own in-house lawyers, because it's hard for us when we have to go to court and fight for lands or fight for any sort of justice, jurisdictional justice upon reservations or off, that we don't have our own lawyers. We don't have Native lawyers. They don't understand who we are. They don't understand our law, our treaties, our jurisdictions, and they don't have the commitment or responsibility outside of, what we're paying them for, so we don't get that extra passion or sauce, like that we would from somebody like you who would make it their life's work to really work for and stand for the people. So yeah,
well,
we need more like you.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemy, because you get people who go to school and train and become lawyers, you don't want to hire them because they're probably so-and-so's cousin or nephew, and you didn't like them anyway. It becomes very personal, and you begin to associate yourself from those people who are trying to make that their lifetime commitment. So, and I'll say this: a lot of those nations that have, lots of revenue, whether it be from gaming or oil or whatever it is, they like to hire the big fancy firms. They get convinced that those are the best ways to go. I'm never convinced of that, because I know that they're about billing and not about results. But you know, it's a culture of, and I call it the people. I think Tecumseh has a hat. You know, it goes decolonize. He loves to do that word, decolonize. That's my buddy over there, decolonize. But it's kind of a mentality of they can do it better. I don't know. You have the ability to learn just as well as they do, right?
Yeah, well, that's why we have you here, is to show everybody somebody that we need to, people like you that we need to start upholding and recondition what we believe to be the best representation. Do you know what I mean? Because that's all conditioning for us to be convinced that this non-native firm is better for us than our own would be. So yeah.
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 So I wanted to acknowledge there's some old time friends of mine. There's Renee, there's Nadima. Who else I got? Who else is over here? A bunch of Tony and her husband Reggie. Got some old timers over here. And I won't call them old timers, they might get mad at me. But long timers, I'll say.
I can go ahead and let people unmute themselves if they do want to chime in.
I'll say
Some
old,
names were mentioned.
You can call me an old timer because I really am old.
oh, I got Fran. I forgot Fran too. Yeah.
I'm the oldest of all.
Yes, you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm still the
I
youngest.
was looking for somebody. There's someone else there. I just see Fran. How you doing? You're in the darkness over there, Fran. What are you doing over there?
I'm in my bedroom.
Oh, okay. So
Renee.
I'm in my woman cave.
woman cave.
Yeah.
She shed.
Yep. No, it's inside. She shed's outside. I wish I had a she shed.
Okay. So, all right.
What would be like your future aspirations for your community, your nation, moving forward, to grow?
Well, I'm Madeiwan, and I have been tasked with the mission of creating a Madeiwan Lodge on the East Coast. That's going to take some time, but that's my mission. I also, as Renee's brother, Mitag, who passed away a couple of years ago, he and I were committed to learning our language such that we will never have to speak the English language ever again. So I'm committed to that mission, because understanding our language is understanding us.
Mm.
Right? I'm fully cognizant of that fact. And so I don't know if those things will get done, but that's what I'm going to try to do. And those are two things. The other thing is, I got me a little vehicle I can travel with. I thought I was going to be able to powwow in it, but that got canceled. Right? But at least it enables me to travel independent of hotels and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that. But if you see this thing on the road, I would get out the way, because this elder is going to be doing all this driving, and he may not be as good as he used to be.
Do we have to get you ramen bars?
I don't know what you got to get me, but
Rolling bars.
okay. No, you just got to get out of the way.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Harry?
Sure, friend.
Do you think that this new ruling that Standing Rock won is going to hold up? Because they've won before, and then somebody, takes it away again. Somebody else,
Well, what they did was they invalidated their permit. Okay.
Okay.
That means the pipe they laid is illegal.
Okay.
Now, what happens then? You know, there's a lot of possible things that could happen.
Yeah.
All right. Many things are possible with that.
Yeah.
There could be a settlement. There could be many things going on. But the determination was that the pipe was illegal. Now, do we make them dig it up? I'm a little skeptical about that because how often do you see them dig up stuff that they did, right?
Mhm.
Different, but not
Yeah.
impossible, you know. So,
Well, they could flush it out and run water.
huh?
They could flush it out and run some good water everywhere.
No money in it.
I know. I know. And now I see where more and more of some of our national parks and sacred places are being considered. They're considering taking some of those spaces away. And you know, when I say they, I mean he.
Well, let me just say give you a little bit of economic history. Native territory is the largest collective uh, environmental resource left in the United States, Indian reservations. Okay,
Right.
so when we say we are the canary in the tunnel, that's who we are. Okay, when you attack us and the resources that are remaining in this country are on our territory, the natural resources, including the water. So when you attack that, it's for a reason, because we stand between us and the rest of America, right? Including fishing, hunting,
Yeah, it is.
growing, all those things, right? So the natural resources in this country are in the possession, the most natural resources are in the possession of the Native communities. And you think that, how long do you think it's going to be before they realize that?
Mm.
So yeah, we have to fight for those things because that's the battle in the 21st century.
And I feel like we're getting traction too, right, Harry? Indian country?
I believe that, this, rise, the whole movement that come out of Canada was, rise and, what's the name? I know I'm having a senior moment. There you go. See, no longer going to accept the things I can't change. I'm going to change the things I can't accept. Right? You know, there's a whole movement there, and I think that we've recognized what's wrong. Now we have to focus on fixing that. We know what's wrong. We know what they've done, and that's why I'm so really glad about the socials and the powwows and things they've done, because it is really focused in, for the most part, it's focused on the power of our culture. Even though you may say it's commercialized and so on and so on and so on, it really does focus on the power of our culture that unifies that. So I'm really glad to have been a part of that. Hope to continue to be a part of that. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Now we have social distance powwow on Facebook for the meantime, right?
That's just you guys to show off and see how cute you are. That's all that is. I know. Yeah, well, that could be in the future.
Well, I don't know. After 8 weeks with no haircuts, I don't think some of us are so cute.
Long hair, don't care, friend.
Yeah, but when you've had shorter hair and it starts growing in, it's not as nice as long hair.
Where's Melissa? Somebody's doing her hair in the middle of this Zoom meeting there. What you doing?
Yeah, we're getting a lesson. That was, see, that's who we are. That's what I love about us.
Yeah. You gotta know, those that aren't showing up, they're probably not because they got raging wigs, right?
No, we're not showing up because we didn't push the right button and I can't figure out how to do it. It's Renee and I'm technically challenged.
Technically challenged,
Oh, you
right?
gotta push the video thing, enable the video.
Well, it's too late now. I did all of that.
Never too late.
I can ask you to do it.
Brother.
It's okay. Listen, we have to vote. We got to get rid of that you know who in the White House. So we all have to vote.
Yes. Yep.
Everybody has to take somebody to vote.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yes.
You do whatever you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. If some people don't like to participate in the process, I say, you may take that, principled position,
Oh.
but you do so at your peril, right?
There
Right.
you are.
Yay!
Yay! Yay! Yay!
What the heck did I touch?
Question.
You're on another planet, Renee.
You did. You touched
What?
it.
Don't mess with it.
I have a
Listen.
question.
You go.
Yes, there's Miss Brown.
Bebonque.
Bebonque.
Winter. Bebonque. Winter.
Bebonque. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking with us. So with all these protests that are going on, I mean, obviously, the racial issues between Black and not Black are very real and serious and ugly. So I appreciate, I think this needs to happen. And then I'm sure I'm not the only one in this group that has noticed 9 times out of 10 when I see Black leadership speaking to the media, I hear statements like, this problem started with slavery and Native people and our history of genocide and slavery and abuses that we all overstand get left out of the dialogue a lot of the time. Not always. Like, I was grateful to see that actually Spike Lee, I don't know if anyone saw it last night on the news, totally acknowledged us, right? But could you just speak to that a little bit? It's a difficult thing to navigate, I find, emotionally, intellectually. It's nothing new, but to hear it happening from people of color is a different thing than when it's happening more from the white community, right? We're still largely being rendered invisible in that racial dialogue in the press.
America does not like to talk about its history. America doesn't talk about slavery. It talks about the Civil War. America doesn't talk about genocide. It talks about the revolution. Okay? It doesn't talk about those things. In order to get the 13 colonies to sign the Declaration of Independence, they had to add that clause in there on the second part of it that says the savages who engage in brutal murder of women and children. That's in the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
So in order to get all 13 colonies to agree, they had to add that in there. All right. If you read the Declaration of Independence, you see that. So what I want you to understand is they don't want you to know their history, know the history of America, because the history of America is based upon, the economy of this country was based upon, as Spike Lee indicated, stealing the natural resource, which was the land, and then building it up with the slave labor. John Marshall, who is the one who wrote the Cherokee Nation cases, had almost 500 slaves. They say he only had 29. No, he had 500. It was just in different places under different names. 500 slaves.
Yeah.
Okay,
That,
so the history
I,
of this country, if we tell that story, America will lose its mind. And that story needs to be told time and time again. Okay? All right, Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, hung 38 plus 2, San Suu Kyi on December 26, 1862. Okay, why do we know that? Because they were going to hang him on Christmas Day. And they said, no, we got to wait till after Christmas so that we can celebrate Christmas. Okay. All right. General Grant, who was the president of the United States in 1868, okay, became president, greatest Civil War general in the history, great president when it comes to destroying the Ku Klux Klan that existed at that time. It was his troops under General Sheridan and Sherman who destroyed the plains, okay, and allowed the genocide in the Western territories, okay, under his leadership. But yet he's remembered for all these things. But we can't tell the story of the abuse of our people because that doesn't fit into their narrative.
well, neither does the abuse of Black people. I'm more just talking about when we have people of other ethnic minorities now, right? Other people of color who, like I said, definitely like that racism towards African American people needs to be resolved and addressed, but their actual dialogue most of the time ignores our history when the two things, to my mind, are so obviously entwined. But how are you going to talk about how, like, it's just kind of amazing, but at the same time not that surprising to me, but it's just very disappointing, right, to hear Black leadership talking about racial issues but completely ignoring our existence apparently in that dialogue. I know that, right?
Their narrative, you can't let those old timers hijack the narrative, though. They won't play. You cannot let them hijack the narrative. You can't let Al Sharpton hijack this narrative because
I see young people too, same
the
thing.
opportunity is there for you to express the narrative in a way that gets your message out. You can't let them hijack it. Okay, Spike Lee made that acknowledgement. My feeling is that the most egregious purveyor of mythology is the media, is the movies. All right, and we need to make sure that they don't hijack this narrative. It's not about rioters and looters. Those are catchphrases, okay? Outside agitators. They're not peaceful rioters. They're not peaceful protesters. They're rioters. They're looters. They're thugs. This is the same shit we heard 40 years ago. It is the same narrative. You can't let them hijack that narrative. I'll say that to you because well, you know, they said we acknowledge the fact that, like Martin Luther King, he led peaceful protests. Do you know what Martin Luther King's disapproval rating was just before he got assassinated? 75% of America hated him. Okay? So if you were alive and conscious in 1968, which side of that equation were you on? Okay? Don't tell me now that you like his stuff because he's dead. Right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if he were alive and capable of walking, he'd be out there. Right? So which side of the equation? You have to be able, and I say this to you guys because you guys are not technically handicapped like me and Renee. You know, you were supposed You were supposed to put this on social media. Fine, put it out there. But you guys control the narrative. You control.
Right. You speak.
You
You
gotta be
speak.
able to articulate that narrative and say what you just said. You're not talking about our story.
Yeah.
It's our story that you're missing, and you have missed it.
I personally, like, I'm from Canada, so I'm Plains Cree. If I was in Canada, I would be much more vocal about it, but I'm on paper, I'm Métis, and I feel like just for, unless I want to get just thrown out of it across the border on my arse, like I'm careful about how vocal I am in public, but at this point, I'm starting to feel like I don't care so much anymore.
Well, I wouldn't worry about that because you can't cross the border now anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And you must,
I'll get you through.
and you must have friends who feel like you, who are on this side of the border, right? You
Yeah,
have
so
buddies,
instigate.
so let them speak.
So
You
get 46. Go get 460-893205 to tell your story, boy.
Exactly. You speak because
Work
you're the
together.
youth.
Work together, right? Yeah.
Right. Work together. Get the group. You speak. You know, we're old farts. I can barely get this damn thing working. But you can speak.
Hey,
You have a clarity.
You know, first thing you do is you tell them what your name means. You know that telling them what that means is not. You know, our names, our spirit names have validity because it is who we are. It identifies us because it identifies us to the Creator. You know, he doesn't know who the hell Harry Wallace is. But when I talk to him, I say, my name is Giwise Inini. He knows who I am. Oh yeah, I know who you are. You know? So identify yourself and take back the narrative of who you are, you know?
Yeah, we definitely need more of that. Yes.
Really. You know?
I also think that Winter, you should don't let the borders confine your voice. You're not far from home. You're in the Northeast. You know, you're in your
Northern
Cree. You are at your home. You are on your land. You know, don't let that Canadian or U.S. border, you know, get in the way of speaking the truth.
Yeah, I really struggle with that one because it's so absurd that I should even ever have to entertain those fears. But at the same time, I mean, my own elders in Canada have taught me, like, I used to be vocal and be at protests, and I was told that was a teaching, is like, don't think you're not on their radar. As soon as you do that, you're totally on their radar. So I'm just like, I have a lot invested in my artwork here, my studio and my home. So, you know, I get nervous because it's like, you get too vocal, you just don't know. Right?
One of the things that we try to encourage is economic independence, to not allow them to control your economic environment, which is, you know, fortunately for us, as I said, we were able to sustain our businesses during this pandemic. We were shut down for a period of time, like 8 days, but then we were able to reopen and maintain social distance protocols under CDC guidelines. And as a function of that, I mean, I got my brother's older than me. He wants to go to work. These guys are terrible, man. They've worked all their lives. What do you expect them to do? Stay home? You know, he wants to go to work. My uncle's 92. He wants to go to work. What am I going to tell him? You can't go? One thing we make sure they do, and my brother is on dialysis. The one thing we make sure they do is that we have somebody do their shopping for them and do their daily, errands, that kind of stuff, so they don't unduly expose themselves. But these guys have worked all their lives, and they're not stopping, you know. So that's the way, that's the nature of who we are as people. He's a WW2 vet. You know what? What am I going to tell him?
Well, if he knows, you know, they have to make their own decisions, I guess. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, right? Is about how dangerous this virus really is or isn't, and what it really is or isn't, and how much we can really know about it. And
We are
like going down the
five,
rabbit hole.
five most severe hotspots are in Indian country. So yeah, it's the next one. 5 most severe. It's in Indian country. Okay. So yeah, there are some communities. What is that community? Cheyenne, right? It's Nadima's people there, right?
Lakota.
Right? They're blocking the road, and the governor doesn't want them to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And they're saying, F you, man, you can't come in.
Yeah.
And they're saying, yes, we can. So what does that tell you?
And they're not even telling people you can't come in most of the time. They're just protecting their lives, obviously.
They're just saying, you know, where are you going? Yeah, if you're going straight through, fine. If you're going to stop, you need to, you know, so they're just checking it, right? So you got all that kind of stuff. There are communities in Canada, Northern Creek communities that I know of, that they have just stopped allowing people to come into their territory. Period. Closed. Right? Because they know, number one, they're susceptible to the virus, and number two, they have shitty health care.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that combination is lethal.
totally. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Harry, what's the population on at your tribe or on your nation, your community?
You should know better than that. You're Mohawk. It's a military secret, man.
No, just because you're so close to the city, and just thinking about the direction we're going over at the American Indian Community House, really trying to commit to being self-determined, and also sort of like, you know, just sort of step into our, you know, our sovereignty and governing ourselves and our economies. So in sticking to those ideas, it just makes me think of like our economies and how you've developed certain entrepreneurial, I guess, businesses and so forth for your community. I'm just thinking about that in the perspective of the urban native, and where we're like what I'm looking to do.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what you're working to do, but I can tell you this. At one time, back in the 69, we wanted to take over Governor's Island. And that just gave you a spot. So my, oh my, how times changed.
Well, we've got our own house. We got the Admiral's house and cannons and everything now, Harry, so come on over.
We were going to rowboat over there.
Yes, get the canoe out.
They just gave you a spot. So what I think you should do is, you know, I don't know, you know, Renee, maybe you could help out with that. I don't know what your plans were. I don't know what your board is, but you need to come and get people who have an ability to come up with good economic ideas. And there's a lot of people there that can do that. And, you know, there's a difference between economic development and program. You guys are program people. That's not how you develop an economy. No. So it's different mindset. That's all I can say at that point. But you need to come up, and Renee's looking at me like, oh, okay.
Oh.
But yeah.
You a programmer,
Yeah. And you know, if you guys, you know, the new economy now is online. We're making coffee, we make wampum, you know, we gotta set up, I'm setting up with my niece, she's helping me set up a virtual wampum booth, right? So we're gonna have that coming up soon because not powwowing all summer. So, you know, you gotta be able to show the stuff that people have been working on all winter.
Well, we had Amy, your niece Amy, right? Amy Wallace. Got her over at Wallace Island, a cold coffee stand this summer. You didn't make
Oh, that was coffee. But now we're doing K-cups in the coffee now. Now we're making COVID masks and, with Indian design. It's crazy stuff, So, I mean, you have to be entrepreneurial. You got Tecumseh over there who's the big, he's getting better and better. So I'm proud of him, man.
You sort of were one of the ones that really revitalized the wampum making sector,
Yes,
right? Can you
right.
tell us a little bit about that journey? I know we only have 20 minutes left, but yeah, that's something I didn't want to forget for us to talk about.
Well, like everybody else, things don't happen in a vacuum, and I had went to my fasting camp back in when I was younger, not quite young, but younger, and saw the need for us to restore wampum to its more traditional use. And I went to a place in Maine, Sapayak, Passamaquoddy territory, and I saw this non-native guy selling wampum for $12 a bead. And I knew right then and there that it was time for me to do something about that. So we built a place where we could manufacture wampum beads. And the first people we taught was our own children. I taught Lydia, Wallace, Chavez, taught Chris, taught my cousin. We taught all the people, and these are young people. We taught Renee's nephew. We taught all these young people, and they were all very young, in their 20s. Taught them all how to cut beads and make wampum, and now they are very good at it. And they made wampum, we call wampum magic, into one of the, I would say, the largest producer of wampum beads in the world. Nobody makes more wampum than we do, and nobody makes it better than we do for the type of we do. And we had many of the traditional wampum makers, and Algonquin and Haudenosaunee, have come to say to us that the traditional guys that make it by hand, their stuff is so magnificent, so beautiful. But they said, for somebody, if you need the best manufactured wampum there is, you got to go to these guys there. And everybody from all over, from whether it be Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Canada, they all acknowledge the contribution we have made, not only in quality and color, but in quantity that we have made. We've made it possible for people to make wampum belts out of real wampum, whereas before it was economically impossible because of the cost. We made it possible. And that's what's special.
Lydia's work.
Okay, that's Lydia's work. There you go. See? Everybody's got pieces of Lydia's work. Yeah? We got all kinds of stuff. Then some of her stuff, and I'm proud to say that she's got wampum belts at in the Museum of the American Indian. She's got a belt in the New York State Indian Museum. She's got a belt at the Worthout National Wildlife Refuge here in what is the federal, Fire Island National Park. And coming up soon, she will have a wampum belt in the Chicago Fields Museum.
Oh, cool.
So she is magnificent. Plus, we made 5 belts for the Seneca Nation that if you see their stuff out there, those are our belts. And I'm really proud of that fact. And I went up to Akwesasne for Holly Hale's wedding. And while there, We saw the wolf belt that's under special light and special temperature controlled environment. A real wolf belt, 400 years old. And then we saw a replica of that made with our beads. And you know what? Except for the fact that our beads were more uniform because of the modern machinery that we use, the color, the texture, the polish, it's exactly the same look as it was 400 years ago. So that makes me proud because our guys believe that when you cut that shell, you are connecting to a historical. It's not just work. There's a relationship there that goes back before time. So it's really special. I'm really one of the really proud things that I'm glad I was a part of. You know?
Yeah, I agree. And like just so needed during this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I was also at the Great Law Recital last summer in Kanawage, and a lot of the belts were there, the wampum belts.
Original.
Just like, yeah, just the spirit behind wampum and the meaning within our traditional communities, you know. What you're doing is just like, it's like glue, like just holding us together also. So I commend you for that work. Yeah, but yeah, so thank you for sharing.
One of the things I wanted to tell you about is that about in connection with wampum, you know, some of those shells are over 400 years old. So I was with some of the guys were working, and they say they feel that if they have a bad day, they don't want to go to work, because if you have a bad feeling and you start cutting the shell starts to break. So those feelings that you have, they transform, or they transfer into the shell. So you have to come in there in a good way just to go to work. Okay. The other thing is, being a Medewan, I've learned that the sound that you hear when you pick up that shell, you hear the sound. And we were taught, Renee and I, we were taught as kids that that's the ocean, right? That's the sound of the wave, right? No, it's not. Wrong answer. Thanks for playing. Medewan spirit has told us that what that is, because the Creator, when he created man, his breath was too powerful. So he tried 3 times to create man. And all 3 times he breathed life into man. Man disintegrated into dust. And then the Migas shell was volunteered to sacrifice his life so that the Creator's life could be deflected, the Creator's breath could be deflected sufficiently so that man would not disintegrate. And so the reason why we wear that shell is because it reflects the breath that the Creator did in order to create man, and deflect sufficiently so that man could be able to be created by the power of the Creator, could live through the power of the Creator. And so when you put that shell, and we are all people of the shell, when you put that shell to your ear, you're not hearing the waves, you're hearing the breath of the Creator. That's what you do. And that's a special thing. What thing that is dead makes sound? Think about that for a minute. What thing that's dead makes sound? Okay? But the shell is alive because it makes sound of the breath. So just want you to think about that while you out there protesting and burning down buildings.
Thank you.
Harry, what a fabulous, fabulous story to end this wonderful call. It was brilliant. I never heard that story. It's great. I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
You know I love you. You know I love you guys, man. You know, we're still around. And I miss those guys that should be here. But I know they're still here with us. And we just keep them in our hearts and keep moving on, you know. And thanks for inviting me. I always wondered why people ask me to talk. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So I just don't. You know.
No. That's not true.
I'm just glad to be a part of the, you know, this. I hope people take away something that they can use and something that they could, you know, work for them. And that's all. So pretty special. Who's the one with the dogs on the beach over there? Who's that? I don't know who that is. Yeah. Okay. So,
Oh, that's Zubin.
Zubin? Okay. All right. So listen, you guys, be safe, be healthy, take care of yourself. Don't get shot.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll join us again, Harry. Thank you so much. It really means a lot for you to take a couple hours out of your life to share with us. But also, hopefully you can join us in other programs in the future, or at least, you know, check out our theater that we have on Thursday nights, which I hope you all consider watching. Tomorrow we have a series of 3 different stories, and they're all native actors casted. And yeah, we're just trying to support many little economies in the theater that are getting left behind due to COVID. They all lost their gigs, you know. So like some grocery money here and there, anything helps, you know.
I got an idea, you know me. We have a lot of stories, right? People are telling stories. I know there's a Mashpee, they have a Zoom where they're telling stories about Moshup, the giant, right? Which, you know, Ojibwe and the Cree believe is Winnebuju, right? But maybe, we don't know. It could be similar. But here's my idea, right? There's a lot of stories that we have, and we got these artists, right? I'd like to be able to not only do some drawings and create some storybooks based upon top-notch drawings, but in addition to that, like I saw that puppetry show, Ajijak, right? And we could do some puppetry on some of the stories that we have a great story about creation. I'd like to do some puppetry on that and puppetry on some other things where we could communicate to our children in a way that they would, you know, first not get bored and second, understand, you know? So it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a great
Couple
idea.
ideas. You know, people could, you know, charge, make some money, and, you know, we could do some trading or make some money and do whatever we got to do. And
Well, we could definitely talk more about that.
Right?
Yeah, we have big plans for theater for our stories. So yeah, we'll definitely reach out for you to talk about that. Okay.
Those Hawaiians came here. They were telling the story of the islands. Remember that? Before the COVID? What a great story that was, wasn't it? I don't know if you guys seen that. Did you guys see that? Yeah. When the Hawaiians came into New York?
Oh, yeah.
That was at the Theater for the New City? Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What an awesome time. I had such a good time with that.
Yeah.
It was so good.
There's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot on the table, a lot that was supposed to happen, but this happened. So just give us a little bit more time to develop that. But yeah, so thank you, everybody. If anybody, you know, wants to say any last words, we have a few minutes left. Just go ahead. You can unmute yourself and say thank you or whatever.
Well, yes. Hi, Chimagwich, for talking with us again. I just wanted to say real quick, I'm assuming that everybody knows this, but you should never assume, right? Does everybody know that FNX is now on one of the local New York channels, 24/7?
What is FNX?
Provisions it's a native channel we have now as one of the local channel 14. All native programming.
Not on my. It's not on my Optimum screen. So you gotta.
I just get like the local digital channels. I don't even have cable. It's just like on the local digital stuff. But it's somewhere on cable. It'll be one of those channels.
And I think channel 64 too. Yeah, I get it in the Bronx.
Yeah.
Channel 64 is New York 1 for me.
Oh,
So
must be a.
send me the link. Email me the link. I'll hook it up.
Do you think it's what?
Television has been doing some really awesome, having some awesome things on Native America, different groups and different stories. I think it's Spirit, might be Spirit that I've seen it several times. It's really interesting, and then when I see it, I want to text everybody, watch this, watch this. But I get too involved.
I believe that the movie and the media has a big responsibility. They created this bullshit image. They have a responsibility to fix it.
Well, Harry, I wanted to add to that. It's one of the reasons why I got into film and screenwriting is I wanted to change the narrative, and I wanted to educate people. And so, with that said, if you guys need more writers or actors, because I do both, I'd be thrilled to be a part or help in any way. So, please reach out to me as well.
Yeah, just email us because
I will.
we do
My name is Tony, by the way.
every week we do a new cast for new stories. We're looking for playwrights and we're also looking for actors.
Nice. All
Every
right.
week,
Awesome.
I hook up with Banu Benton and who else? Shane, and who else is doing those story writings there? This guy right here in the corner over here, Kanuzit Anishinaabe.
I'm not a writer, but Anishik for that. I said I'm not a writer, but Anishik for that, Uncle. I'm really thankful to hear these stories.
Well, you make shit up, so you don't have to write. Just make it up. It's good to see you all.
Good to see you.
And you can ask if you want to know what kind of person I was. Ask Tony. She tell you.
you tell us.
Harry, I make it a point of only saying nice things, and he was the nicest friend. High school's a rough time, and Harry was always the kindest, gentlest, handsomest soul in high school.
Let me know where to send the check later, okay?
Harry, I'll confirm that. She said nothing but positive things about you. We were looking for dirt on you, but she didn't have any, so.
Never, ever, ever. There's nothing to tell in that respect. Harry, you may not realize this, but Harry was stellar. He just was the best. Smart, kind, athletic, so involved in high school. The best friend. He just was kind and always knew how to treat people right. Always. There's no dirt to tell.
All right, on. I didn't realize I had all that going for me. I could have.
Yes, you did.
You could have went further in life, right? If you knew all that.
I could have got a better job.
Should have got paid more, huh?
Yeah, really. Just kidding.
All right. Oh, also
he was a good friend. I don't, speaking of somebody you knew in high school, they got to be a good friend, right?
yeah.
There's a lot of people in high school you don't want to talk to.
Harry, I always remember you dancing with my grandmother. That was the sweetest thing. At Jimmy's house, remember, at my brother's house, and you started dancing with my grandmother. She's like 3 feet tall. That was so sweet.
Also, Harry, you're going to get the bingo invite. We want to invite you to bingo this Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We give out good prizes, right, everybody?
Yeah.
Don't forget my boy Marvin Lee involved. He's a big. He's a bingo
And if
player.
you thought maybe Renee would come too, right, Renee?
Right.
Renee, you look good. Renee, I haven't seen you in a long time.
Got the little air blowing in the bird.
All done with smoke and mirrors. You know what I mean?
You're in space somewhere.
Last time I saw you was with Phoebe. We went to your house during the Shinnecock powwow.
Oh, wow.
That's a while back.
That's a while back. It's a while back.
Hey, and
I
by the
did-
way, for those who have not been to bingo, there's some amazing prizes if you win. Beautiful stuff.
It's a lot of fun.
Nice prizes. Nice prizes. I just won.
Check that out.
I
Send
just
me
won
the connect on that too.
And Ruben gave me his prize. So.
Oh yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
I won 2 prizes in one day, and we got them already. We just got them.
Cool.
Zubin gifted her one, and she won one. So we got lots of bling.
That's
Well,
good.
I've been going to bingo up at Foxwoods for a few years now. Have never won anything, and I won bingo here. There you go. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, it was a Mohawk Insider thing. We were looking into that.
You like that bingo?
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Harry. Love you.
Thank you. Hi, guys.
All right.
Bye-bye, all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.